Thank you.
Sure. Well, aren't we still in the seventh day?
Read the Old Testament. Yes. Read the whole Bible.
Seventh, not sixth, then. We're in seventh. Okay.
Oh, then it's okay. No.
Good. Okay, so we will very briefly, for the sake of those who weren't here last night, and just for the sake of refreshing our minds and the content we had last night, we will go very quickly over what we said, and we'll build on it our discussion for, again, continued discussion on Christianity and science, part 2 today. Okay? So this is what we said last night. We defined what science is. And we said that science deals with the natural order, natural world, creation, the physical world. It deals with that which is, what appeals to the senses, and it deals with that which we can use observations for. We also said that there are limits to science, to the scientific methods. We discussed the limits of the scientific methods. The scientific method does not deal with anything that is metaphysical. Morals, values cannot be subject matter study in the scientific methods, and that's what lies beyond the inductive reasoning of the scientific method. And then we saw a couple of video clips, and then we said the real purpose of science as it was authored and intended by the creator of science, the creator of this world, God, and as it's a window to his creation. We also talked about science not being flawed as far as facts and factual data cannot be flawed, but the process and those who use science, scientists, and the process of science evolves by time. And we talked about the analogy of the hardware, the world, physical matter, the software, the governing laws, and the credit should go not to the hardware or the software, but the creative mind who created and developed both of these. God who created the world, and the scientific laws that actually govern the world. And then we said, this is somewhat on the philosophical side, meaning of life, kind of what is the world to us? It's a finger pointing to what lies beyond the world. Scientists that use the physical world for the sake of just science and for the sake of studying the world itself as an end, not means to an end, fall short from fulfilling their desire for meaning and satisfaction because they attach themselves to lesser hopes and lesser goals, mistaking the finger for what it's pointing towards. And we also talked about what scientists used to be atheists, that through their genuine search for the truth, science led them to belief in the divine, belief in a transcendent being, and ultimately they realize that this being can be none but our Lord, God and Savior Jesus Christ. We also talked about science and atheism, or scientific atheism, and that's the academic term for it, scientific atheism, and one of the prominent figures in scientific atheism is Richard Dawkins, of course, and is an evolutionist, a scientific atheist. I wanted to pause because I didn't mention something last night that I wanted to bring to your attention. Any of you heard of new atheism? New atheism, not atheism, new atheism. And that's a totally different, not totally different, it's different. So do yourself a favor, and when you go, when you have some time, you can Google new atheism. It's a movement. That was developed by, they call them the Four Horsemen, but really developed by Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, okay, Daniel Bennett, I think his last name. Anyways, they developed what's called new atheism. And it's a growing movement, and it's very popular on college campuses, so your children are exposed to it. Or at least, if not exposed to the actual academic term new atheism, because it doesn't advertise itself as I am a new atheist thinker. It basically they're exposed to their ideology or their philosophy. What is it? Atheists, or the traditional atheism, says, I don't have enough evidence to believe in God, or believe in God is a very minimal probability and I don't have enough scientific evidence. Now, new atheism says it's foolish and regressive and a lot of other negative things to actually believe in God. So they take it to a whole different level. Okay? It's very unintelligent, or we now with the scientific discoveries, how can we still believe in what those folks of old call God? So new atheism takes atheism to a whole different level, and this is what's going on our college campuses in terms of ideologies that infiltrate the academic world, and this is what our children are exposed to. So I think we should investigate more about new atheism, and Richard Dawkins is one of the prominent figures of new atheism. We talk about science and atheism and how atheists basically use science to seemingly validate their claim. And then we talked about the atheists who cannot, or the naturalists who cannot reconcile with the natural disasters in this world. Now this is part 2, and we stopped at this slide. Has science disproved the existence of God? What do y'all think? Has science disproved the existence of God? Now the question has a fallacy. The question itself is wrong. Why?
Yes.
Exactly. If you're really talking science, science is not in the business of disproving things. Science is in the business of proving things. Now, let's say, I'll give you some examples. All right, well, science cannot prove the non-existence of anything. Why?
It's based on observation.
It's based on observations. Very good. Very good. Why else? It assumes what? For you to prove, or to prove the non-existence of something or someone, it implies what? Omniscience. In other words, when you say science has proven that God doesn't exist, you're implying that you have become God, because you have to know everything. I think Sayyidina gave us the example of knowing everything about one thing, or knowing, what is the other example, Sayyidina?
One thing about everything.
Or one thing about everything. Exactly. You claim omniscience once you say science has proven that this thing doesn't exist. Let me give you an illustration. An analogy will help illustrate. If I say to you, I believe that there is a stone somewhere in this world that is about 3 inches deep, and it's brownish color, that if you were to flip it on its side, you'll find yellow dots that are symmetrically positioned, and so on and so forth. It does exist somewhere in this universe. You come to me and you say, it doesn't exist, and science proved it doesn't exist. What does that imply? That you've searched the entire universe, omniscience, knowing all. And we're not able to find that stone that I'm referring to. So science is not in the business of disproving things, but proving. And that's the difference between the deductive and the inductive reasoning. Any of you are familiar with these? I'm not going to get into them too much. But there are 2 different methods of reasoning. Science deals with the inductive methods. One, the deductive method is a top-down approach. The inductive is the bottoms-up approach. I'm not going to get into it, but just very briefly for the sake of discussion. The deductive methods begins with a theory from the general to the specific. The inductive goes from the specific observations to the general. Some examples. Deductive reasoning, and this is used in philosophy more so, and it's more conclusive. Deductive reasoning is more conclusive than inductive reasoning. And science, again, uses inductive reasoning. I'll give you an example of a deductive reasoning. children nowadays have lost not the dignity of their parents, but the ability to go to their parents and ask for information. Because why would I go to mom and dad and ask for information when I can just look it up? You see? I have knowledge accessible to me. But knowledge without virtue and wisdom is very, very dangerous. And that's why it's a caution. Sometimes we may claim to be, I read a book about this and this, I became an expert in this. I'm a scientist, I can do... Humble yourself, till your soil, so that knowledge, the seed of knowledge, when it falls on this virtuous soil, it will eventually yield what? Fruit. Okay. Knowledge without the soil of humility is this. Isaiah 47:10. Your wisdom, listen to this, your wisdom and your knowledge have warped you, and you have said in your heart, I am, and there's no one else besides me. That's knowledge. Not according to humility. Have warped you. In other words, that your knowledge actually became your enemy. Because you said, I am he, because you don't have any humility. St. Paul said a very interesting verse about knowledge. He says, knowledge does what? Puffs up. There you go. What kind of... You just said that knowledge is good. Yeah, but there's knowledge with what? Good soil that the seed had fallen on, that gives you fruit and that you need to do and work on and all that, but their knowledge without the good soil of humility and love will puff up. 1 Corinthians 8:1-3. Now concerning these things offered to idols, we know that we have knowledge. We all have knowledge. Knowledge puffs up, but love edifies, and so on. So my friends, look at this plant. If you need to have a plant that eventually will yield fruit, the fruit of knowledge, this is knowledge. If you want to have the fruit of knowledge, if you want to have the spirituality as a result of your theology, or if you want to turn your theology into spirituality, you must till your soil. You must prepare the soil of your heart and the soil of your mind to receive this knowledge. Indispensable to bearing fruit. Isaac Newton, we all know him. He said, in science, this is very profound, I love what he said here. In science we resemble children collecting a few pebbles at the beach of knowledge, while the ocean of the unknown unfolds itself in front of us. We think we have attained. The Dawkins of the world, the Hitchens of the world, the Harrises of all the atheists of the world, they think Wuslo, they've attained all that could be attained. Yet Isaac Newton himself said that we're children collecting a few pebbles at the beach of knowledge, while the ocean of the unknown is unfolding before us. This is the knowledge that we shouldn't have. A few verses. Woe to you who are wise in their own eyes. The scriptures are filled with verses about being wise in your own eyes, and you think that you have attained all that can be attainable. Do not be wise in your opinion, and so on and so forth. That's why Christ said, I thank you, Father. Beautiful verse, and it sums it up. I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, and that you have hidden these things from the wise and prudent. Wise and prudent, yes. Wise and prudent, what? In their own eyes. And then you have revealed them to babes. What are babes? Babes are those who are teachable. Something that we actually don't have much of nowadays. Simple and humble. You see? Those things of God can only come to you if you have that soil of teachability, simplicity, and humility. This is the knowledge we shouldn't have. Knowledge is power. The power to make other people feel ignorant or stupid, as it says. This is the knowledge we shouldn't have, but this is the knowledge that our culture and society thrives on. Correct me if I'm wrong. I hear this all the time at work. In the consulting world, as a consultant, you have to be knowledgeable of all the operations of the businesses and so on, so that you can offer consultative values and expertise and justify your income, right? So we always say this, knowledge is power, because as a consultant, you need to have knowledge so that you can let your clients know they don't know anything about anything, make them feel inferior to you. That's what our society thrives on. Am I mistaken? Right? But here's the problem, or here's the issue, not the problem. Knowledge is power. Not power over other people, but knowledge with good soil is actually power over and control over yourself, not over other people. That's why St. Peter says that in the verse, add to virtue knowledge. And when you have knowledge, you will have what? Self-control. That's the knowledge we should seek. The knowledge that will give me self-control, not the knowledge that will give me control over others. That's the knowledge of the world, or the wisdom of the world, as St. James says, and the wisdom, the heavenly wisdom, that gives me self-control, not control over others. Now I want to pause and talk to you about questioning the questioner. Having said that, we always have to look at the intent of the questioner before we can be quick on answering the question. Okay. I'll give you 2 examples. Who's this? Anyone can tell me who this is?
Nicodemus.
Huh?
Nicodemus.
Nicodemus. And who are these? Pharisees. They asked Christ, both of these folks. Or Nicodemus came and asked Christ, although he came at night, yes, maybe the method wasn't very... But he did come and ask Christ some questions. You read this in John chapter 3. And then Christ told him you have to be born again and all that. And then Nicodemus asked the question, how can this be? And thank God he asked this question. Because part of the answer of Christ was the famous verse, John 3:16, for God so loved the world. So I'm glad the question was asked so that we can get the benefit of this wonderful verse. But he asked the question, what was the intent of his question? It was good. He really wanted to know. So what did Christ do? He answered the question with content, with information, with knowledge. There was a good soil in Nicodemus' heart. Right? Now, let's look at the other scenario. The Pharisees asked Christ many questions. For example, Jesus, can you please tell me by what authority are you doing these things? Christ could have said, well, by my authority, by the authority of him who sent me. He could have answered the question, but he didn't answer the question. He actually, do you know what he said in return?
He asked the question.
Yes.
He asked the question.
He asked them a question. What was the question he asked?
John the Baptist.
Very good. Well, let me ask you, the baptism of John, was it from heaven or was it from... And then he asked them, and then they reasoned within themselves, oh, wait a minute, if we say from heaven, oh, he's going to say, why didn't you believe in it? And if we say it's from earth, John the Baptist was highly regarded, people will get upset at us. So they said, we don't know. What did he say? Well, I'm not going to tell you. He's not playing childish with them. But what is the message Christ is sending? When he answered Nicodemus' question, yet he didn't answer the question. It was a question, both questions. What's the problem? What's the difference? The intention. That's why, my friends, always remember this. Intent is prior to content. Intent is prior to content. There is a beautiful saying of George MacDonald. Beautiful saying. He says, to give truth to him who loves it not is but to give him multiplied reasons for misinterpretations. To give truth to him who loves it not is but to give him multiplied reasons for misinterpretations. In other words, intent, loving the truth, is prior to content, the truth itself. Do you understand? Does that make sense? There's another situation with Pilate and Christ that speaks to this, to the intent prior to content. Pilate therefore asked him, are you a king then? Jesus answered, yes, you say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world. Now listen to this. That I should bear witness to what? To the truth. Here is the most important statement in this passage. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. You know what that means? You can also translate this by saying, everyone who is on the side of truth hears my voice. Or everyone who's committed to truth hears my voice. In other words, it's not the problem with my voice. It's the problem with whether you are loving and committed to the truth or not. If you have the intent to know the truth, you will get the content of my voice. Do you see how it works? Intent is prior to content, and that's a very important lesson for all of us in this day and age of knowledge and technology and knowing and knowing and knowing. Get your soil ready so that your knowledge can bear fruit. Oh, actually, here it is. George MacDonald. To give truth to him who loves it not is but to give him multiplied reasons for misinterpretation. So faith and evidence, I think for the sake of time, I'll skip through this. Very briefly, talking about faith and evidence, those people who say, you know what, I am a man of logic and reason. You prove things to me, I believe it. You don't prove them to me with reason, with logic, I don't believe it. In other words, I have my mind as my source of truth. Pascal, famous mathematician, scientist, he said, God has given us evidence sufficiently clear to convince those with an open heart and mind, yet evidence sufficiently vague as not to compel those whose hearts and minds are closed. So the evidence is the same. The difference is your heart and mind, open or closed. It's not the problem with the evidence. Ravi Zacharias always says, it is not the lack of evidence, it's the suppression of evidence. Someone said, why Christ couldn't just appear and say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to play hide and seek with you anymore. I am Christ, believe in me. Why are you making it so difficult for me to believe in you, Jesus? Why don't you just come and appear? I had this question many times from Christians, from Coptic Orthodox Christians and youth. Why is he playing hard to get? He's playing hard to get, isn't he? Doesn't he seem to be?
But they still wouldn't believe.
Exactly. Give me a scenario in the scriptures. A scenario in the scriptures that... Very good. Lazarus and the rich fool. Yes. Remember when he said to Abraham, can you please go tell my brothers? He said, even if what? Exactly. Moses, if they don't believe Moses, no one, even if someone rises from them, they will not believe. So the problem is not with the lack of evidence. The problem is that Christ didn't come and appear to you, and that's why you couldn't see him, you can't believe. The problem is not the problem with the mind. The problem is with the will. Back to intent being prior to content. St. Augustine says, faith is understanding's step, and understanding is faith's reward. You want to understand? Well, you have to have the soil of faith, love, and humility for you to understand. And when you have that soil, you will understand, and that faith will be the understanding will be the faith, reward of faith. Justin Martyr also said, a man seeks the truth by the effort of reason and is disappointed. It is offered to him by faith, and he accepts. And having accepted, he finds that it satisfies his reason as well. See how beautiful this is? Yes, sir.
Going back to what you said about how people are saying, why didn't Christ do miracle? So basically you're saying he wants people to believe who are not saved.
Right.
According to their will.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
As he said to Thomas. Yes. I may have mentioned that to you last year, but if you weren't here last year, you'll hear it for this. So if you were here last year, forgive me, you're here this the second time. But a conversation with a scientific naturalist that says, you know what, as I was telling you earlier, I am a man of logic and reason. Give me 100% proof, and I will believe. And he was actually, this was in a conference in a state not too far from here. And then he stood in a church, and unfortunately he fell victim to atheism and all that. And unfortunately also he had some followers from our church and with him. So he stood up and he says, give me 100% proof that Christ exists, and I will commit my life to him today. Whoa. This was a true story. And then I said, you really don't believe what you're saying, or do you? He says, yes, I believe what I'm saying. I'm a man of reason and logic, and I need 100% proof. I said, no, you don't believe what you're saying. I said, no. He said, yes, I believe what I'm saying. I said, well, let me give you some, do you mind if I ask you some questions? Here's actually the picture. Do you mind if I ask you some questions? He said, yes. I said, have you taken a flight recently from one place to another? He said, yes, I have taken a flight. As a matter of fact, last month I flew from this city to that city. I said, very good. Have you personally checked the service record of this plane? He said, no. I said, have you personally checked the fuel gauge of the plane to make sure that you have enough fuel to take you from point A to point B? He said, no. I said, have you checked the license of the pilot to make sure that they actually have valid licenses and they're able to fly the plane? He said, no. I said, how foolish of you to commit your life in a box of metal without having 100% proof. So you do live by faith in many situations of your life. But why, when it comes to Christian realities and the Christian worldviews, why do you require 100% proof? You cannot live your life, possibly or logically or practically, with 100% proof phenomena. You can't. You see? So the problem here is not that I want 100%. So the question then becomes, do I have enough evidence to make me have 100% commitment? Enough evidence. Now, is there enough evidence? We can talk about the evidence of the scriptures, the resurrection, so many evidence that we as Christians, we can speak to. But the problem again is not with the evidence. There was no response, by the way, from him after the questions. The real underlying issue is this. Some verses again. If anyone wills to do his will, he shall know. You want to have the knowledge, you have to have the will. Why do you not understand my speech? Christ is saying, because you desire to do what your father, speaking about the devil, wants you to do. Former atheists, Mortimer Adler, he said that the real reason for rejecting God in favor, that he was an atheist, the real reason for rejecting God in favor of scientific naturalism lies in the state of one's will, not one's mind. It's not an intellectual problem, as I was mentioning to you last night. It's a problem of morals, conduct, lifestyle, and so on and so forth. This is beautiful. One of my favorite quotes, again. I want to make sure that I say it to you in slowly. Because the presence of God, a former atheist as well, the presence of God made me more and more uncomfortable. So I began looking for reasons to believe that he didn't exist. So which come first? It made him uncomfortable. He says, not many of us atheists doubt God's existence and then start sinning. Most of us atheists sin and then start doubting God's existence. Do you see? So it's not the problem of God exists or doesn't exist. I'm a scientist. I ascribe to the scientific method and it proved this and this and that. It's the problem of the heart. The reason why the Pharisees rejected Christ 2,000 years ago is the same reason why atheists reject belief in God today. Here's my last slide, I promise. And this is the condemnation that the light has come into the world and men loved darkness rather than light. Why? Can someone finish that verse?
Because they're wicked.
That's right. Because their deeds were evil. And I will give you an illustration. Do you mind if someone turns off the light? Someone turns off the light in this room. Sorry, guys, okay. Let's say we're in a room. You're by yourself in a room. The lights are off. Can anyone see you? No, you're doing something bad. And the lights are off. And you're doing whatever that is that you're doing bad. And you're continuing to doing this bad thing in darkness. And then someone comes and turns on the light.
Yes, turn the light.
Can you turn on the light? No, sorry, just for illustration. Someone comes and turns on the light. What happens to what you're doing? It now becomes exposed. You have two options. One option, to stop what you're doing. Because now what you're doing is exposed. People see you. So you got to stop what you're doing, bad, and start doing good. But the other option is to turn the lights off. And that's precisely, my friends, what we do. Well, not we, what those who reject Christ They reject Christ not because they can't really fathom his existence. It's that they want to turn off the light to continue doing what they're doing in darkness. And that's what Christ referred to. So when we talk about science and Christianity, we can philosophize all day. We can answer questions about the naturalism, the scientism, and all those isms and schisms, and talk about theories and all these things. But let's get down to the real issues. And that's what I want to caution you with. And this is apologetics. Get to the issue so that you can be able to address and tackle the right questions. Don't answer the wrong questions, because you'll have wrong answers and you will not get anywhere. And glory be to God forever and ever. Amen. Any comments or questions? Yes? Sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add a little dimension to that discussion that you had on the plane.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So maybe it's a logic for that guy to check the gauge or ask for the license of the pilot, and his faith did not come out of nowhere. He actually depended on other people who did this.
Exactly.
So there are other people who checked the license, who did, and his faith came based on those people, although he did not see them. And that's exactly what we have also. Our faith depended on the apostles and the disciples who talked to us and explained to us the presence of Christ. So although we did not see what they have seen, but they already told us what they have seen, and we believe in that. So this is faith came also based on facts. Facts by other people, not depending on faith of nothing. So it came also with some foundation.
Very good.
That's what I mean.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
It's not exactly a question, but regarding the intent and the content.
Yes.
The intention of the question.
Yes.
I totally understand and agree. Some people are going to just ask you questions for just the sake of asking. They have their ears closed. They're not going to change.
Yes.
But my fear is, you were just saying that this is a movement. It's on the college campuses, and our youth are getting exposed to it. And this person in the church who became an atheist, and unfortunately, he misled some of the church members, and a lot of them are youth. How can we Christians, how come they are able to talk and convince people and are not scared, and how come we cannot offset that? How come we, they're not going to come to someone who's strong, although some people who are strong are going to fall, but for the weak, shaky people, how come our youth and us, we cannot talk openly? We are scared. We don't know how to answer. We don't know how to defend our faith. How can we, I think it's a problem. How can we treat that problem?
It is a problem, and I agree with you. And very, very good point. Thank you for bringing that up. This is one of the reasons why we have the Apologetics / Evangelism conference. This is one of the reasons why you're here today. This conference, with the guidance of His Grace Bishop Yusuf, is a culmination of what you just mentioned. Again, don't expect, going from 0 to 60 in a few weeks or a few months. So it's a gradual process. But it's incumbent upon ourselves to educate ourselves as servants, and to educate others to educate others. This conference and this convention is a seed for this very point you just mentioned. Your Sunday school your Sunday school curriculum rather, needs to be augmented with apologetic themed topics. Having one day, open day seminars or what have you. Go out and read books. Equip yourselves, because sometimes we feel that if I read more, if I know more, I may actually be confused more, and so on and so forth. But maybe use someone as a mentor or as a guide to you, if you're a servant, to equip yourselves and learn more. Also, another thing is that part of the reason why I do what's called the on-campus ministry of apologetics is that I go to college campuses and I see Muslims, Buddhists, atheists, and new atheists. They have presence on college campuses. When I say presence, I mean they have an institutionalized presence and funded by the universities. Why can't we, who hold the key to the truth. Hold the truth. Why can't we have? So it's an evolving process. And again, if you're saying this in the perfect setting, because in my own personal opinion, I think His Grace Bishop Yusuf is one of the advocates of equipping the saints, and he's an advocate of apologetics and teaching others how to defend their faith, because you have to know how to defend your faith for you to evangelize and share your faith. And I think I would like to hear any comments, Your Grace, that you want to add to that.
No, I think you said it exactly right. We need to equip ourselves, as St. Peter said, and we should be ready to give a defense for the reason of hope that's in us. But sometimes our youth actually agree on or believe in the atheist teaching, as George was explaining, because maybe they loved darkness more than the light. So this actually helped them to calm down their conscience. And I like to share a story actually supporting what George just said today about the problem. It is in the will, not in the mind. A few years ago, maybe 5 years ago, some youth came to me in Nashville and told me their professor of philosophy is an atheist. And actually he asked them many questions, and they know he is wrong, but they could not answer him. So they asked him, do you mind to meet our bishop? So he said, no, I don't. And they came to me, do you mind saying that to meet him? I told him, I don't. So actually he came to the church, St. Bishop Church in Nashville, and we had a meeting for about 2 hours. And at the meeting, he told me, thank you for this meeting. You answered many of my questions that were never answered. Whether this was a compliment or a real statement, that's what he said. So in my mind and in my heart, I thought, now maybe his heart is ready to accept the Lord. So I told him, in the Bible, there is a verse that says, if two agrees on something and prayed for it, it will be granted. So I propose that you and I pray that God may reveal Himself to you, and we should pray this for the next 10 days. And let's have a meeting again after 10 days. So he paused and told me, if you want to pray for me, I cannot stop you from praying, but I will not pray. So I asked him why. If there is a God, then He will reveal Himself to you and you will know the truth. And if there is no God, then your prayers just will go in the air and you will not lose anything. So this was his answer word by word. He told me, I know if I pray, I will believe. So I looked at him, I told him, by the way, this statement is a statement of faith in the existence of God. So are you saying to me that you choose not to believe? Again, it's your will, not your mind. And he paused.
Wow, very well, good story. Thank you, Sidney.
Yeah.
I just want to say something. I think there should be like an apologetic committee that reviews the Sunday school curriculum and infiltrates some of these ideas in the curriculum.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I believe that there is, I agree with you, there's a boarding seminary that I think that is going to take place. I'm not very equipped to give you the details on it, but I think in October, September, going into November as well, October, November. So this boarding seminary has now a full curriculum and modules on apologetics, and it's in an academic setting, and it's going to be pretty much all-inclusive of apologetics. As I mentioned, as Sayyidina also mentioned, I think we can have a lot of good ideas, and these are good ideas, but I think there is something that we ourselves can do, even if it's limited, but you can do something, even if it's not on a level of service of Sunday school, with your own family. You see what I'm saying? Your own friends. So what you can do, and what I'd like to call it, we are the seeds. Our presence today is the seeds of, go and do yourself a favor and purchase some of these books. Equip yourself, equip your friends, your family, and then once you begin to spread this equipping or knowledge, things will evolve and morph. That's kind of the organic way of doing it, but there's also the organizational, structured way, and I think Sayyidina is having some structure, academic structure and organization. About the augmenting the Sunday school curriculum, I totally agree, and I don't know, Sayyidina, if there's efforts to do so.
Now there is effort actually to update Sunday school curriculum, not only on the diocese, but actually on the level of the whole Coptic Orthodox Church. And there is a committee headed by His Holiness Pope Tawadros to actually work on updating the Sunday school curriculum, not only in Egypt but all over, and addresses the needs of each continent and each country. And the way this committee is structured, it's not only just working on updating the curriculum and then that's it. No, it will be a continuous effort, and the curriculum will be updated regularly. Yani, they will not do just the work and then leave it for another 10 years until they think again to update it again. No, the committee will be a continuously working on updating the Sunday school according to the needs of each region in the world.
Great. And that's great, say that, because there's almost every 6 months, there's a new movement or a new ideology, almost maybe more frequent than that. So that's great. And to your point also, these challenges, you may think that are exclusive to the West, to the U.S. In Egypt, actually, there is especially now after the events of the Islamic, issues and all that. There are some. I was actually talking with Reverend Abuna Dawood Lamri, and I'm working with him on creating some kind of an apologetic program for in Arabic for the youth in Egypt. So it's not just exclusive to our youth here in the West.
I want to add something. All these new ideas, actually, they are not new. It's a new way of expressing them. But if you read the apologetics, the apologetic fathers in the 2nd century and 3rd century, actually, they answer the same question that are posted right now. So all these are not new. Maybe new way to write them, new way to express them. But the idea are the same over and over since actually the early centuries of Christianity.
What I liked about what you said is you touched on things that our kids see in their environment, like the new atheists, and how they are aggressive. They don't follow the old thing, we don't believe in God, there isn't enough testimony, but we go aggressively, this is foolish. These kind of things, we need to incorporate that in how we address those youth that see this. Yes, it's the same things, but we need to use that modern language to address what they're hearing.
Right.
So therefore, it touches right away, and they don't feel a disconnect between what we're saying, although it's the same thing, but it's how we say it.
Right. And there is on the diocese website, there is a section under literature, I think dedicated for apologetics, and there's a lot of information there that you can use as reference and resources. Yes.
The common theme is that it seems that people at a certain age, around high school or college, is when they struggle with this the most. Why? We have to ask the question why, and it seems to me at least, it's a psychological, it's a developmental psychology issue, in that at this point in their life, they want to prove they're all grown up. So as soon as they discover that Santa Claus doesn't exist, oh, then also the tooth fairy doesn't exist. Therefore, also God does not exist. And I think that we have to address such issues from their youth, you know? I already told my kids, Santa Claus does not exist. They got mad at me, you know? Everybody got mad. How can you tell your kids that Santa Claus doesn't exist? So we have to address the fact that this is a developmental psychology issue.
Very good point. Very good point. And you're speaking my language. I like that. Developmental psychology. Very good point. Yes. Omar.
I'm happy with all this discussion, but otherwise, I'm gonna just make it back to back, and there will be no lunch, no break, nothing. I'd love to
We
do
don't mind
that.
that.
So I think we should take a stop at this point and take a break for 10-15 minutes. Now we are 1 hour behind our schedule, so
No, 15 minutes.
15 minutes
Well,
only?
15
Okay.
minutes only behind this.
So we'll take 10 minutes and come back for the workshop. We will squeeze it to half an hour, and then we'll take another 10-15 minutes of break, and then we come for the lecture of Grace Bishop Peace. Okay? Thank you for your attention.